Hello and welcome to News Central Television. I am Lekon Onobanjo and here are stories making headlines beyond the continent. We begin the news in Europe where U.S. President Joe Biden has pledged a further $225 million in aid to Ukraine at a meeting with President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris during their visit to France for the 80th anniversary of D-Day. Biden offered a first public apology for the months-long delay in U.S. military aid that Russia has exploited to make crucial battlefield advances. He also announced a new package in weapons, including air defense interceptors, artillery, ammunition, and other critical capabilities.
To help you reconstruct the electric grid, and they deserve it. You deserve it. And, it's just remarkable. It's just remarkable. And the National Security Bill passed, that was a political issue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. First of all, thank you so much for your significance. Signed it and supported and voted.
In the meantime, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky hopes a summit hosted by Switzerland this month on bringing peace to his country would hasten a fair end to the conflict. Zelensky made this known in an address to the French Parliament more than 2 years after Russia invaded Ukraine. He warned that 80 years after the D-Day landings of World War II, Europe is unfortunately no longer a continent of peace.
Дорогі друзі, фактично за тиждень відбудеться наш D-Day, дипломатичний день, Diplomacy Day, інаугураційний саміт миру, який може стати форматом, що наблизить справедливе завершення цієї війни.
Now, the National Anti-Terrorism Prosecutor's Office says a Ukrainian-Russian man detained in France has been charged with plotting to commit a violent act in a terrorist plot. According to prosecutors, the man had arrived in France several days ago. The 26-year-old man was reportedly arrested by France's domestic intelligence agency earlier this week on suspicion of plotting a violent crime after he hurt himself in an explosion. Let's also tell you that a European diplomat on Friday says NATO alliance is expected to set more demanding targets for its members to bolster their air defense, long-range missiles, and logistics capability. NATO has drafted the first major defense plan since the end of the Cold War, spelling out how the alliance would respond to a Russian attack. In the meantime, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, during a visit to new alliance member Sweden on Friday, says Ukraine has the right, according to international law, to attack legitimate military targets in Russia to defend itself. We're now going on a short break. When we return, we'll delve deeper into this particular story. Do stay with us. You're watching Beyond the Continent on News Central Television, and we have been talking about the story as regards to Ukraine's war with Russia and the position of NATO in providing armory and, of course, military weaponry with the collaboration with the U.S. to ensure that Ukraine is able to put to an end the fight with Ukraine. Now, joining us on the news to discuss this is Ejike Okpa, a global affairs analyst. Thank you so much, Ejike, for joining us on the news.
Thank you for having me, as always.
So let's start this way. How do you envision the role of Switzerland and other international partners in facilitating peace in Ukraine? Is it possible?
Well, I think the last time I read something about that, Zelensky had, extended invitation. I don't know whether Putin is going to be attending. So if Putin is not attending, then, the peace thing is just going to be a pure waste, because the two warring sides, the two partners or the two parties to this have to be represented. If Putin is sending a representative and Zelensky is going to go, then Zelensky is going to feel let down. So I don't know, but if Putin agrees to go, then at least there's willingness on his part, to see an end to this, war that I don't think should have even happened.
It's quite hard to even say truly if Putin will attend, because we see the U.S. and the NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg backing Ukraine now to attack Russia within its domain. And I'd like to find out, are there any rights of legitimacy to this call or this move by these two entities to give credence and support for Ukraine to go ahead and attack Russia? And of course, we could always put it around the fact that wouldn't that even jeopardize a peace talk that everyone is calling for in Switzerland?
Well, the thing is, in response to that, of course, NATO is going to back Ukraine, and the U.S. has never been unwavering in their support for Ukraine. But the reaction to that is that Putin said, fine, you do that. I'm going to take some of my weaponries to Cuba, which is 80 miles away from U.S. And then if Ukraine were to attack me, then I'm going to attack American target. Is that going to happen? I don't know. But, if it does happen, then it's going to escalate the conflict. And now everybody else is going to get into it. So I hope this becomes just a cat and mouse exercise they are doing, and then maybe at the end of the day, those things are not going to happen. But Russia is entitled to react if America and NATO supports Ukraine to react by giving them weapons that are going to target installations in Russia. Russia said, okay, fine, I'm not going to bring war into U.S., but I'm going to go to a country close to you and I'm going to attack you.
That's quite big. Now, let's look at logicality. It's been speculated by some that what U.S. and NATO can do in this instance is to first stop providing military weapons or aid to Ukraine. And with that, they can now call for a peace meeting, and that would be a stepping stone or ground for Russia, of course, Putin, to come to the table and discuss the possibility of a truce. Do you think that that could be one way that you think U.S. or NATO can exploit to bring about lasting peace between the two countries?
I like your line of thought in this question, because, again, when there's war, one thing you will not overrule is the fact of ego. This is ego of the two people. Even though there are people on both sides that say, we don't need to be dying, civilians are dying, military people are dying and getting wounded. But the ego gets to enlarge as to who is going to acquiesce, who is going to surrender. All the conflict, the major conflict we've had in the war has been that of European neighbors fighting each other. And I don't know why the world should be so drawn into it. It's an European war. The First World War was European. Second is European. Now they are teetering, at the edge of another third world. But the rest of the world will say, we're not going to get drawn. The drama is too much. The injuries are too much. So hopefully, if NATO and US will say, okay, Ukraine, we're not going to support you with any more weapons. We're just going to give you enough for you to defend yourself, but not so one that you're going to be shelling Russia. Then, Putin might say, okay, fine, that makes sense for me. Let's sit down and talk. But if US and NATO makes the mistake of giving something to Ukraine, I can assure you that it's going to be bigger than what we have thought. Because in the past 2 years, all those back and forth hasn't yielded to anything. It's more like giving Ukraine more money. How many billions have been given to Ukraine? And still we haven't seen an end to this. So it is very unfortunate.
Well, Ejike Okpa, Global Affairs Analyst, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us. We hope that peace will come to that region as soon as possible.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Let's now head to North America for some health talks. Now, the World Health Organization has confirmed that a man infected with H5N2 bird flu, the first confirmed human infection with the strain, has died from multiple factors. WHO spokesperson Christian Lindmeier, during a press briefing in Geneva on Friday, said the infection of H5N2 is being investigated to see whether it was infected by somebody visiting or by any contact with any animal. On Wednesday, the WHO said the first laboratory-confirmed human case of infection with H5N2 avian influenza virus had been reported from Mexico. In the meantime, Mexico's health ministry said the 59-year-old man had a history of chronic kidney disease, type 2 diabetes, and long-standing systemic arterial hypertension.
The patient died after 3 weeks of complications in January. He was bedridden for 3 weeks, then went to the hospital because of complications, respiratory complications, and died in the hospital on that day, which was, I think, 24 April. Subsequently, tests were done, and when on 22nd May, the infection with avian influenza H5N2 was confirmed. The IHR was notified, and on 23, this notification happened. So investigation is ongoing, serology is ongoing. That means the blood testing of contacts also to see if there was any possible earlier infection. At this point in time, we do not know as it's multifactorial, it's a multifactorial death. That's how it is going down into the into the file, so to say, in such a case.
Despite U.S. President Joe Biden's new executive order to better control the influx of migrants at the U.S. southern border, migrants are still pouring into some remote areas, such as Jugumpa in California. Under Biden's plan, the government will suspend the right to claim asylum with few exceptions if the number of people apprehended between the ports of entry exceeds 2,500 people for 7 straight days. However, the executive order announced on Tuesday does not apply to unaccompanied minors and allows the government to make exceptions in cases of urgent humanitarian need.
Porque no estoy de acuerdo con el partido político que está gobernando mi país y he recibido bastantes amenazas. Entonces, por eso. Pues las personas lo van a intentar, a ver si se les puede dar la oportunidad o no. Porque pues la calidad de vida en otros países pues es bastante difícil. Y pues como ves lo que te dije ahorita, que hay gente de muchísimos países. Entonces no es solo un país, sino que ya pues creo que es una cuestión a nivel mundial.
De Guatemala, Ecuador. De Guatemala llevamos 20 días. 20 días. 20 días. 20 días. Para llegar acá. Gracias a Dios ya estamos acá.
Yeah, it might changes who and how many and all this stuff. It changes every day, but in the end, the reality is the same: is that this is the Exodus. This is people coming to the Promised Land. You understand? They're not invading. They're not doing anything like that. They've been, whether truly or not, they think they're coming to the Promised Land.
Let's also tell you that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is set to address the United States lawmakers in Washington, D.C. on July 24. He will speak to both chambers of Congress, the Senate and the House of Representatives as the Israel-Hamas war continues. Republicans and Democrats both invited the Prime Minister to speak. Recall that last month, the International Criminal Court's prosecutor applied for arrest warrants against the Israeli leader and his defense minister, Yoav Gallant, on charges related to the war. Netanyahu condemned the ICC move, saying he rejected with disgust that democratic Israel had been compared to what he called mass murderers. Away from that, and now to South America, where recovery efforts have continued on the Rapulo River in northern Bolivia after a bridge collapsed, leaving at least 5 dead and 6 injured. A heavy shock caused the bridge to collapse in the indigenous town of about 18,500 people. 400 kilometers northeast of La Paz.
Donde se están intentando recuperar los cuerpos que todavía siguen, ¿no?, abajo del puente. 5 cuerpos ya han sido rescatados y estamos esperando, ¿no?, de los otros 3 que faltan.
Ya han ubicado los cuerpos, ahora estamos esperando una moladora, un motor de luz para poder romper el hormigón y también que llegue la retroexcavadora o la gallinita que le llamamos.
Staying in South America, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has visited one of the areas affected by the floods that devastated southern Brazil in Rio Grande do Sul. The president, during the visit, told those who have lost their homes that the federal government will ensure that they get them back so that they can live with dignity.
Não faltará ao povo do Rio Grande do Sul. Aliás, eu disse isso 4 vezes já. E vou dizer pela 5ª vez. Nós não vamos faltar, prefeitos e companheiros, ao povo do Rio Grande do Sul. O governo federal vai cuidar de fazer com que todas as pessoas que perderam a sua casa tenham a sua casinha de volta para poder morar dignamente aqui no Rio Grande do Sul. E não permitam que as eleições deste ano atrapalhem o compromisso de vocês com esse povo. Não permitam que seja utilizado, sabe, com objetivos eleitorais, essa desgraça que aconteceu.
Beyond the Continent continues in a short while. Don't go away. Officials report that at least 9 Yemeni employees of United Nations agencies have been detained on Friday by Yemen's Houthi rebels under unclear circumstances as the rebels face increasing financial pressure and airstrikes from a U.S.-led coalition. Others working for aid groups are also alleged to have been taken. The Houthis, who seized Yemen's capital nearly a decade ago and have been fighting a Saudi-led coalition since. More recently, they have been targeting shipping throughout the Red Sea corridor in what they say is a direct response to Israel's war with Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Now in Asia, China's President Xi Jinping on Friday met with Brazil's Vice President Geraldo Alckmin in Beijing, and during the meeting Xi spoke about the close relationship between the two nations, China and Brazil, as developing countries and important emerging market countries. He also hailed China's friendship with Brazil, telling visiting Vice President Geraldo Alckmin that their ties go far beyond the scope of bilateral relations. Since returning to power last year, Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has carried out a delicate balancing act as he seeks to deepen ties with China while improving relations with the United States. In the meantime, the Chinese government says it would allow the Philippines to deliver necessary supplies to a grounded Philippine Navy vessel on Second Thomas Shoal in the disputed South China Sea. Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning on Friday at a press conference in Beijing said the Philippines should not use this as an excuse to ship construction materials to the deliberately grounded warship in an attempt to permanently occupy the Renai Reef. Recall that Philippine Coast Guard J. Tarila said they had deployed a boat on May 16 to retrieve soldiers from a Navy speedboat and had informed the China Coast Guard of the humanitarian nature of their mission.
如果菲方向中方提前通报，我们可以允许菲方向坐滩军舰运送必要的生活物资以及撤离相关人员，但是菲方不得以此为借口向坐滩军舰运送建筑材料，图谋永久侵占仁爱礁。
Finally, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi and his third-term cabinet will be sworn into office on Sunday evening. This was made known in a statement by the President's office. The President is expected to administer the oath of office and secrecy to the Prime Minister and other members of the Union Council of Ministers. And that's all on Beyond the Continent. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. While you do that, follow us on social media. We are at News Central TV. And you can equally watch us live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onobanjo.